All right, so let me come back to my guests as we wind up. We've completely run out of time, but Karanja will not go without listening to, the question that I had asked my panelists earlier about some of the lessons that we can learn and how to move forward, even as we wait for this major announcement today.
I think elections are not just general election. To me, what was the biggest challenge of our election 2017 was the nominations at the primary levels. We didn't have very good conduct of the nominations. And I would suggest that we invoke Article 88 of the Constitution to make sure that the IBC be charged with the mandate of conducting primary elections. And it's very, very important because, you see, currently the Treasury or the public or the taxpayer funds political parties. But how they conduct their primaries has a direct effect or consequence to what happens in general elections.
All right.
And I think one of the things that my good colleagues mentioned here is a garbage in, garbage out. So it is really imperative. Plus, IBC also needs to be very careful or should be charged with making sure that it conducts civic education,
all right,
as provided for in the Constitution. Plus, also county government. If you look at Chapter 265 of the County Government Act, one of the mandates is for the county government to conduct civic education. To me, that is a major lesson that should have been learned or ought to be learned through this process.
All right.
The second thing that I want to say is that how you brand yourself is a major issue, because I can see one of the challenges that NASA had was that there was no presidential candidate of NASA. What we had was ODM presidential candidate, but nothing much was talked about ODM. So people are getting confused when you talk about NASA, and then you look at the details and you realize the presidential candidate is ODM, and the deputy is Kalonzo, who is in Wiper, but he is a presidential candidate.
But Karanja, remember that some opinion polls actually showed that NASA was quite popular with the electorate, even after, they launched
the reason why I'm saying that is because, you see, if you look at most of the elections, forget the presidential elections, if you look at the MCAs, look at the senators, look at the members of parliament, look at the governors, one of the biggest challenges is that NASA was actually contesting against itself.
All right. We have to...
and that, to me, explains a lot about what really the fallout happened that was not even expected.
All right.
I think it's a major reason.
We have to wrap up. And, gentlemen, I'd like to just hear like maybe 30 seconds topmost of what is happening with some of the civil society groups. KHRC, one of the oldest and the most vocal society groups, civil society groups, bank accounts frozen, all these allegations about tax evasion. Today we've just had another one, Africog, which also central bank has frozen its account. Are you reading any ill motive with this, especially coming at this time? Mutai, very quickly.
Betty, at times democracy has very funny outcomes. And for this to be happening at this point, I can say it might show some ill motives.
All
but
right.
the question we need to ask ourselves is it a process that was ongoing? If it is a process that has been going on, only that the decision has been made at this point, we can understand it. But if it is a knee-jerk reaction towards or tilted towards the position of the certain the certain NGOs because of where they stand in terms of their political persuasion, I think that is unfortunate.
All right.
And it doesn't help the growth of democracy.
All right, Felix, just a few days ago, the Rosemary, a civil society group that is connected or linked to Rosemary Odinga Key Empowerment Foundation Kenya, also had, questions, raised about some of the finances they've had, and their accounts were frozen. Early on in the year, we saw Kalonzo Musyoka's foundation also, getting the same treatment. Is it a process maybe that could have been ongoing, or is there any ill practice here?
Whether the process has been ongoing, as Mutai is saying, or whether it's a knee-jerk reaction, it's utterly unconstitutional. And my fear, as I've said, is that The results of, unfortunately, the outcome of this election and how it was done has taken us effectively to pre-1997 situation. And I can promise you, and I've been in the civil, I've never worked for government. I've been in the civil society all my life. Even with the old constitution that introduced and gave President Moi absolute powers. And despite President Moi's problems with the civil society then, remember Kenya Human Rights was registered in '94. President Moi, with all the powers that he had, never deregistered any organization. It spells doom to the, for the country moving forward. And my question is, does this can we rely on this constitution as the guarantor of individual rights and liberties? I don't think the answer I think is no.
Okay. Nelson, very quickly, maybe in 15 seconds.
I think this is a crackdown on civil liberties, freedoms, and rights. It's quite clear that we may be headed for a reign of infamy. I think most of us are old enough to see where problems are. I do not think we should now say that we are praying for things to get better. Look, if this be the case, so be it. I think sometimes certain things have to happen for people to understand how erroneous their decisions may have been.
Karanja, final thoughts on that, very briefly.
My point of view is that I'm a very strong believer in the rule of law and the due process. And nobody, no institution, should claim immunity as a result of impunity for not obeying the laws of the land.
All right.
And for me, everybody should be, laws are sacrosanct, and everybody should be subordinate to the laws, NGOs included.
All right.
And that's my view.
All right. We'll end up the conversation there. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. I've been speaking to Oliver Kipchumba Mutai, sitting next to me, who's a lawyer and an analyst. We'll also have Felix Odhiambo, who is an electoral law and governance expert. Thank you for your time. We've also had Nelson Havi, a lawyer and an analyst. And last but not least, Karanja Kabage, who's an advocate and a political analyst. Thank you very much for your time. All right. So we want to wrap up things here, but we need to get what's trending from my colleague, Zinzi Kibiku. Zinzi, good morning. What is